And the Honey Badger's a good player. He really is a good player. And those Super Bowl rings that, you think about, the thing I always like Super Bowl is for the winners, how many guys are getting their first ring? And that to me is gratifying.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of them, and whichever team goes, there's going to be a lot of new Super Bowl players or new Super Bowl winners this year, no matter which team wins. I'm excited to see Andy Reid finally get one if the Chiefs come out on top. It's hard for me not to show my bias as a Seahawks fan. I was rooting for the AFC as soon as it came down to Green Bay and San Francisco.
Okay.
That being said, I think that both teams have a very good chance of winning. I don't think this is going to be. I don't see this as a blowout. I think this is going to be a very, very good game that could go either way. So.
Well, I was at Andy Reid's game in Jacksonville when the Eagles took on the Patriots, and that was a good game. He had them very prepared. Let's face the reality. Tom Brady was, I believe that was the second Super Bowl ring of what would turn out to be 6. So the man from Michigan was beginning to write his chapter and his legacy, and he's out of the picture. But there won't be no shortage of storylines. So wouldn't it be good to see Andy Reid finally get that first ring? He's definitely won. The one thing Andy Reid did in Kansas City was what Marty Schottenheimer didn't do, and take him to the big game, because Marty Schottenheimer was a very good coach with the Chiefs for quite a while. He really was. But Andy Reid comes from the Mike Holmgren school of coaching tree. You think of that dream team of coaches that were out of Green Bay, right, Candy? Would you have Steve Mariucci on there, John Gruden, and who else?
Well, Holmgren. Let's see who else.
Well, and a lot of you go even further back. A lot of them were under Bill Walsh.
Right, that's true. So you have the Bill Walsh. Right.
I want to say that Mariota was actually under them. Was under Bill Walsh as well.
Yeah, Steve Mariucci.
In his very, very early years. So,
yeah.
I mean,
Steve Mariucci. Yeah. Good points. So yeah, no, I mean, when you talk about the 49ers and the Packers, beyond just the game itself last week, you think of the coaches that are connected between those organizations and how well they've done. I mean, geez, you got Andy Reid on that staff. You have Steve Mariucci, John Gruden, all who went on to be head coaches. Mike Holmgren only left Green Bay because he wanted to do it all, be the general manager and the coach, because like Bill Parcells would always talk about, if I'm going to go out there, I want to bring in the groceries and coach them. But Holmgren had a nice run. I can't really wonder what Holmgren did after he left Green Bay. Yes, he took Seattle to a Super Bowl, but they came up short. But Holmgren will be more remembered for what he did in Green Bay. Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
Well, in Seattle, he actually became obviously he became the winningest coach at when he retired. But with Seattle, he was one of Seattle's continued success of getting to the playoffs. We only got to the one Super Bowl, but his continued success with Seattle in the playoffs was really what put Seattle back on the map in terms of the NFL landscape. He was one of the Seahawks were one of the few teams, I want to say, really since about the year 2000, I want to say is the only has been to the playoffs. Has only been to the playoffs less than the Patriots.
Well, I mean,
there's maybe one or two other teams that have been to the playoffs more than the Seattle Seahawks, and a lot of that was because of that sustained success with Holmgren. And then we had the down year with Jim Mora, and then in came the Pete Carroll era. So.
Well, Seattle's had a very fine history. They really have. Think about it, okay? Jim Zorn, your first quarterback, had a pretty solid career to begin with. I think, if I remember right, Jack Patera was the first head coach for Seattle. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, when you think about the Seattle history, the Seahawks have done well. I actually, many years ago, saw a Seahawks game over at the old Kingdom, and that was pretty neat. Be able to see a game, around Christmas time when I was taking a major trip around the country and was able to fit the Seahawks in. And I got to tell you an interesting story about that. I remember when I was covering the Super Bowl in Jacksonville, And, there were some writers from the New York Times that didn't show up. And I asked one of the Seattle PR people, if anybody didn't show up, let me know. I'd be more than happy to take the seat. She said to me, you know what? So stay nearby and I'll motion you over. And lo and behold, that lady from Seattle, what a sweetheart of a person she was, got you covered, gave me my pass, and I couldn't get up to that press box fast enough. Let me tell you, that was in a year when we didn't have to worry about the questionable 50 versus 97 ratio age-wise. I had my what are they called, the PF, my Converse All-Stars on, so it seemed like I could dash right up there. But yeah, Seattle's had a really good history. Pete Carroll's done a great job. Jack Patera built it from scratch. And of course, Mike Holmgren's done a really good job putting it on the map. But they've been pretty consistent throughout. Every time you have a coaching hire, they either work or they don't work. But in that particular situation, they've got nothing to be proud of, and they're only going to continue to build on it with some of the shrewd drafting decisions that they've had beyond just coaching itself. So very proud organization out in Seattle, and I wish them well. And they got a cornerstone quarterback, Russell Wilson. Candy, what do you want to add to this?
Well, Russell Wilson was a good quarterback. I remember him. He came out of Wisconsin. I got to bring my Wisconsin ties,
Well, you should. That's how we got drafted. Yeah, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. So, but Mariucci grew up a Packer fan.
Yeah.
And did you know that Tom Coughlin he was actually a Packers assistant coach?
Was he really? Well, I can tell you the biggest one of them all was Don Shula being an assistant coach for the Detroit Lions in the 60s. So let's talk about Marshawn Lynch. You're obviously in that neck of the woods. What did you think of Marshawn Lynch's mini comeback?
I didn't mind it. When you lose your top three running backs to injury, and all season ending from a broken arm, a torn ACL, and a broken hip, there really aren't a whole lot of options. I think that Travis Homer filled in phenomenally as our number 4 guy that we drafted in the 6th round this past year. But bringing in Marshawn, I thought it was good to see a little bit of extra push from the fans in the stands when he was out on the field. That being said, I wasn't expecting the old Marshawn Lynch. I was expecting the Marshawn Lynch that we saw his last couple of games with the Raiders, where he was gaining 1.5 to 2 yards a carry, and every once in a while busting one for 5 to 7, which is basically what we got. He was at the end of his career. I wasn't expecting it to be crazy. I thought he'd be a good goal line back, which he was. Able to power to get that 1 or 2 yards that they needed. So it was fun. It's not something I want to see again. To be honest, I think that Marshawn Lynch, he showed that he had a little bit of burst, but for the most part, it's gone.
There's a reason.
I hope that
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ryan.
I hope that the Seahawks would draft another running back this year, because with Penny tearing his ACL so late, he's probably gone for this whole next season. So, I hope they try to fill up that running back hole a little bit more. We'll see how long it takes, Carson to recover from a hip injury. And he's really, for the most part, kind of been a little bit of an injury risk all of his career. And let's not get started on CJ Prosise and how he's never been able to finish, half a season. So, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see where they go with running back.
All right, we got about 2 minutes to go. Another coach that crossed through the old kingdom. I remember it was Chuck Knox also coached there too, didn't he?
Chuck Knox was the one that took them to their very first AFC Championship game. So
another former assistant from the Detroit Lions that got away via the LA Rams, who ended up doing well. So had to mention that in there. Now that we'll have Don Shula, Jim Zorn, and Chuck Knox. I mean, Chuck Knox is a heck of a coach. Unfortunately, he never won a Super Bowl, but don't tell me what a great coach he is. So another minute to go. give me your final score about who's going to win this contest.
Well, it's hard to go away from my heart and everything in this one. So I'm going to go. The Chiefs finally win a Super Bowl. After 50 years of not getting there, and so I'm going to say the Chiefs will win this one. I'm going to say it's going to be a semi-high scoring game. I'm going to say 31-27.
Okay. And so I have to ask you, were you hoping for a Chiefs-Packers Super Bowl like everybody on the planet in fairy tale land was? I know I was definitely pulling for it. Didn't work. Don't mind going out on a limb for that should have happened.
No, one of my favorite looks. I'm sorry, Candy, but one of my favorite looks in the world is the disgusted look of Aaron Rodgers when something doesn't go his way. That's one of my favorite sights to see. So
it's okay, thanks. It only hurts where it counts, but.
All right, Ryan, I want to thank you very much for taking this Saturday out to spend some time with us here in the Sports Exchange. And you can follow Ryan Schoolroot on Skull King Fantasy Football on Twitter. And Ryan, look forward to having you back in the rotation more often. But glad you're able to make this special Super Bowl edition here on the Sports Exchange on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. Ryan, God bless you and your family. We have a lot more work to be done. So thanks for being on the program today, Ryan. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Ryan.
No problem. We'll talk to you guys later.
You bet. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
So, Candy, some observations about what we've done so far. Obviously, we're just midway through the program. And we have a lot of other things to look forward to. But
I just want to add a little comment. We were talking about Marshawn Lynch. And we asked about, did we want to see him going forward and how did he do? And my thought was he filled in admirably, but there was a reason why he was available at that point in the year. He's not a running back of the future. He was. Don't get me wrong. He had a great career. He's done some good things, but he's not up and coming.
No, but I'll tell you, he's a smart businessman. Yeah. Beast Mode got a boost because he went ahead and played. And you know what? Maybe he isn't up and coming running back, but if he stays in shape and he shows that he wants to play, I got to believe the Seahawks would really love to have his energy and his enthusiasm on there if they can't find a viable option. So I wouldn't say that he's not a good candidate to play in 2020. But, boy, I'll tell you one thing. You don't need him to be a 3 or 4 down running back. All you need is just that situational thing. And as I mentioned, LeGarrette Blount earlier with Al Bornstein on the program, you get those guys that can plow it in for a few yards out. There's always room for a role player and a running back. So
right, but remember, Seattle already has 4.
Yeah, but can you keep them healthy?
Well, obviously they couldn't this year, but do you go into this? How many roster spots do you take for running backs?
Well, I think the old adage goes that when you're dealing with the NFL, 50 to 60% of your roster turns over every year. That's why you have signings where you have injured future and all that stuff, because in the end, the roster size during the offseason is 90, and then you come down to 53. And when you talk about injuries in the sport, which is arguably the most physical sport of the 4, then you definitely need a lot more bodies, and you see that the strong survive. We know full well sometimes it's not the best team that gets the Super Bowl, but the healthiest team that gets there as well, because you have to endure quite a bit.
Healthiest and hottest at the right time
No
of the
question
year.
about it. No question about it. Good points. So,
it's the hot hand in December and January that are getting you there. Obviously, you got to have some luck in the beginning of the year too, because you got to be in a position to even be out there. But it's a question that they're going to have to figure out whether how many running backs they want to keep, what his off season looks like, what their injuries look like going forward. Recovering from a hip injury for a running back, I would think would be crucial. An arm is a little different. If you were a quarterback, an arm would be a little bit more concerning. But a running back, I would think the hip injury would be one that you've really got to work through. But then again, I don't get paid millions of dollars to analyze this or coach it or play in it either. I do know injuries were up this year compared to last year for